There's one thing I want you to do for me.
What?
Come here.
What?
Win. Win.
What are we waiting for? Take this!
What is up, EOP sports fans? It's Wednesday night. It's 8:30. It's time for EOP. I'm Big Al.
I'm Joe Marks.
I'm Pat Bernard. What's going on?
That's right, guys. Joey Sheeran is off tonight, but I brought in two heavy lifters here at EOP to join me tonight. Yes, we got Joey Marks from the Patterson Fanatics and Pat Bernard from PM in the AM on Sundays. But we have a lot to cover, 4 for 4 and more, as we always say here. But the Eagles finally have announced their O and D coordinators. They are out in the combine, and you got the Flyers who are doing nothing. they're like, you know what? We're going to do what everybody else does. We're just going to do nothing. We have that going on right now. The Sixers are playing right now against the Miami Heat for the second time in 2 games. And they are actually winning right now for anybody who's paying attention, 65-49. No Joel Embiid tonight. We'll get on that in a little bit, as well as the Phillies are in spring training, and we are all getting excited for it. But let's start off with your Philadelphia 76ers, because, like I said, they're on the TV right now. There's about a little bit more than 2 minutes left in the first half. But Joel Embiid not playing tonight. I mean, I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised. He's had the foot problem even before the All-Star break. But I do have a problem. And I usually defend Embiid. Pat, you've watched me do it a couple times on your show on Sundays when I'm producing with you. Joey, me and you've gone back and forth on Joel Embiid for years now that we've known each other. But the fact that he played in the All-Star game, and now, you come out, you put up a hell of a return game, because the game against Minnesota was tale of 2 games. The first half was just terrible. Then the second half was just like the men possessed. But then they lose 2 tight games to both the Celtics and then of course the Miami Heat. And now you have to sit out a game now. Now is the time you're going to sit out and not play. And you could not play during the All-Star break, which is my biggest pet peeve. And maybe you sat out the first game and had time to heal. Guys, what are your thoughts right now with no Embiid in tonight? Joey Marks, I'll start with you.
I'm going to go with what Reggie Miller had said during the Memphis game, and I brought this up on my show a week or so ago. Load management. It's going to be something that happens not just with Embiid down the stretch run. It's going to happen to Harden. It's going to happen to Tobias. It's going to happen probably a lot more with PJ Tucker, because they want to save those old legs as much as they can for the playoffs. And I don't like to, say that load management is part of the game, but it's part of the game. And it's been part of the game since Duncan and since the Spurs and Popovich made it popular. But, I don't take. Do I agree that he should have sat out of the All-Star game? Yeah, but I think he was trying to prove a point. And I don't know if that point is something that the Philly fans needed to know or feel. I think it was more of a national point that he wanted to make to people. Yeah, I mean, tonight is just load management.
Pat? I kind of agree with Joe. I mean, out of nowhere, right before the game, you get told your superstar's not starting tonight. No awareness of that. I haven't heard anything with you. And again, Al, I've been on the same train with you. I've been defending this guy against Mike. Mike wants to train him now. He thinks he's injury prone. The whole 9 yards. I've been defending this guy. You can't get rid of an elite superstar. That's a little crazy. However, the injury prones and all this other stuff and the nights off especially when you went down 0-2 against two heavyweights in the conference. You really can't afford to be falling apart like this, and especially at a time like this. Again, what you and I and Mike talked about. This is our measuring stick here. This for the next 2 weeks till Saturday, it's going to be a measuring stick. And for the Sixers, they need every which win possible. Now, listen, they're up about, I think 17 right now, 17, 18 points right now. But can they sustain this lead? That falls on Doc. Well,
And here's my thing: is I'm not upset about load management. I understand that this is going to be something happen. We knew this. We accepted load management, especially with Joel Embiid years ago.
Mhm.
It's the timeliness of this load management. Okay, they probably knew he wasn't going to play from the get. Like I said, his foot has been an issue. He admitted it to being an issue before the All Star break. He admitted it that this is what's going to happen. My complaint is you've lost 2 games in a row to one team in front of you and one team right behind you in the standings, and now when you could have sat out, when you felt snubbed in the All Star, do you know what would have been better? Do you want? I ain't coming. I ain't gonna go. If you don't want me there, I'm not gonna bring you ratings by not going and not playing and resting and rehabbing, and then maybe even rehabbing further.
why go down to a potential home spot for you? There's been mentions again a few years ago. There's been mentions that he wants to play with Butler. We've all heard it, and this thing doesn't go well, according to the reports I've heard today, where Jimmy or James Harden wants to go back to Houston just for the payday. If this all goes, doesn't go well, there's a potential home right there. So he could be saving that for Miami for the upcoming future.
Yeah, and with the Harden, I think that's just speculation. That's just, him trying to say, oh, well, if you don't really pay me, Maury, I'll just go back to Houston and I know they'll pay me whatever they want or whatever I want because they can give me a super max deal because they have no max contracts. And I can just sit there on my hands and there's no expectations. So he's doing it for leverage, for contract leverage. I don't think he really because look, this is a guy who's dying for a championship. It's he's either gonna get one here, like this being his best opportunity, his best chance, or he's gonna go chase a check. That is the bottom line.
I think chasing a check's more likely with him in
Yes.
this case.
Uh,
And
mhm.
listen, we'll find out. This will speak volumes of what happens. Maybe it is a posturing of him and his people trying to get the most amount of money out of the Sixers that they can. Um, but it's just I'm high on the Sixers, but I'm not that high. Though I think the Sixers are going to make a big push. I just it's hard for me to believe going 0-3 against the Celtics. Always seem to have that's a team you're going to run into one way or the other, be it Eastern Conference Finals or something before that. Miami, most likely a team that you could run into at one point. Um, you
And
know,
Jimmy Butler wants to put a
So
dagger in his team. He hates this team.
I
Uh,
I I, I want to contest this for a minute because the one thing that I kind of have seen with the Sixers, at least from maybe a small window, is okay. So they beat the number one team in the West with the Grizzlies when they are thriving, and then when the Utah Jazz, I mean not Utah, when the Jokic, Denver. When
yeah,
Denver was thriving and they were number one in the West, the Sixers beat them. So we know that they can beat the highest level of competition in the West. I think the biggest concern, and I've voiced this throughout the season, is the East is the beast of the NBA. But this is why I'm okay with load management because I think from seeds 1 through 6, it's going to be an interchangeable race for the next 3 or 4 weeks. The Sixers could have conceivably had won the Celtics game and been closer to the number one seed. Now they're buried. Okay, but now they could still bounce if the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis's injury, they could still bounce between 2 and 6 in the next 2 weeks. And don't get a heart attack because I feel like the way that the playoff brackets push out, the Sixers just need to focus on how well they play going into the playoffs.
Well, and you're probably not wrong. I mean, I'm not hitting the panic button any which way. I think the thing is I keep seeing the same thing we've seen in years past, and it's just hard for me to imagine this team being any better in the playoffs than it is now. Now we all know the playoffs are a different beast, and things will happen differently. We don't know what PJ Tucker is going to be like when we have him at full PJ Tucker mode for the playoffs. We don't know. We're seeing a healthy Harden now. Um, but the one thing I do know is that if I had any troubles with workers' comp, motor vehicle accidents, personal injury, or criminal law, David R. Cherry's the man I'm going to call in this case. I go to cherryinjurylaw.com, or I'll call him simply on his phone at 610-565-0300, because when I need somebody to fight for my rights, Dave Cherry's my man. So, guys, check him out for all your legal needs. But
So
with that being said, is like I'm just my thing is I'm just not seeing improvement or progression.
I want to agree with you here too, Al. Again, we all look towards this past week coming up because you got the Grizzlies, because you're getting some stellar competition here. You're getting one of the top-notch teams in the NBA, right? But the problem I'm seeing, even it goes back to this Grizzly game, they play from behind. Some reason, like again, we talked with Bob Cooney Sunday morning. Like we can't figure out why you're up by 13 and then you fall back, and then so again, like I get it. We need a 3D. Hold on, you need that defensive perimeter guy, but you need also, to me, you need 3-point players. You need 3-point shooters.
I agree with the perimeter defense. The perimeter defense is a joke by the Sixers, and it has been
I'll
for
be
a
right
while.
back, guys.
And for me, it's a matter of with the long stretches, and Bob knows this. He's been on our show, and we've had conversations for years. The basketball is a game of runs, and as much as people might hate the seesaw effect, the extreme seesaw effect of like 13-point runs, 17-point runs, stuff like that. That's just the way the NBA is now because of all the 3-point shooting. And, because if you have a guy that all of a sudden hits 3-pointers in a row, and we've had that happen to us plenty of times, that's a 9-point run right there. So, and that's only off of 3 possessions. That's not like, 4, 5, 6, or 7 possessions. So that's where runs can become more inflated in my mind.
No, listen, I understand it's a game of runs, but I also look at the stretch ahead of them. I mean, they're playing the Heat tonight. And say they hold on to this league, Joey, and they win tonight, all right?
Mm-hmm.
You go to Dallas, you play the Mavericks, okay? You go over to Milwaukee on so yeah, and that's tomorrow. So you got a back-to-back games. You're in Miami tonight, you're in Dallas tomorrow against 2 good teams. Then you'll have a day off, and then the night after your show on this Saturday, the same day you're going to have them playing the Bucks in Milwaukee. Now it might be without Giannis, but that team is stacked. You got Middleton and guys like that who can play very well. So, and then you go off to the Pacers, which aren't a great team, but they always seem to give the Sixers fit. You got Buddy Hield and who else is out there?
The other guy from the Sacramento Kings deal.
Oh yeah, and those guys are just good players. And then you're in Minnesota to play the Timberwolves. Then you have the Trailblazers and the Wizards at home, which should hopefully be a couple wins, and then Cleveland. So I mean that's between now and March 15th. So that's over the next 2 weeks of time. It's tough sledding. It's a lot of games in 2 weeks time for the Sixers. A lot of road trips for 2 weeks time for the Sixers. So this gauntlet's going to tell a lot and can make or break us, having seeding, because I think in this case, in this season, number 1 seeding is very, very important, because if you're not number 1 seeding and even number 2 seeding, you're going to have to go through maybe both those guys. That means you're not just playing either just the Bucks at one point, or you're playing the Celtics at one point. You're probably going to be playing both.
Well, and I don't disagree with that, but as a buddy of mine would normally say, you're going to have to go through the best of the best anyhow to get to the NBA Finals. So, anybody that in the East, and I brought this up on my show on Saturday, is that if we're below, I think where we would be the 3 or 4, we wouldn't face the Celtics or Bucks until the Eastern Conference Finals, the way that things set up. And so that being said, I'm not as concerned about the seeding because I feel like the East, it's a power conference, but I feel like the majority of the teams are pretty even. And listen, the Celtics game and the Heat game, you're talking about the Sixers losing by 1 possession. They're not like they didn't get blown off the floor. And so like I brought up, I was on another show with a gentleman that is from Boston, and he's a big C's fan. And I said, you guys would have lost that if we had 1 more second. Like that's just it.
One more
And,
second, yeah, half a second.
right.
Yeah.
But I mean that is the thing, is these games are super competitive, and that's what you're really looking for. You're not just looking at the L's and the W's. I know we all want to see the W's, but like I said on Saturday, because of how hard this stretch is, you're going to have some L's.
Well, to me, like I did notice though on Saturday they gave Jason Tatum like that first half was very rough for the Celtics. I mean, Jason Tatum had 5 to 6 turnovers. Embiid getting 15 of his first 20 points against Al Horford in the paint. Again, Sixers were creating havoc, but that second half, man, they just took their foot off the gas pedal. Al Horford was dropping dimes from the perimeter, and Tatum had a field day. And 18, that's
I
where he
still
got
have a
18
theory
points.
about that, by the way. I remember I told you the other day on your last show, Pat. I swear to God, the whole Al Horford was a plant thing. I swear to God, he
Yes.
he came in. They said, "Listen, we're going to do a little rebuild. We're going to get some guys in here, so we're not going to ready to compete over the next year or two."
It's like a Russian spy.
Yeah, like go get a ton of money from it and it just look really bad against it with the Sixers. Go to Oklahoma, we'll trade you back. We'll get a couple, it costs us next to nothing, and we'll bring you back and we'll make a run. Like I really believe that sometimes.
He's the Nick Foles for the Celtics. For what I mean, he can't go nowhere else and play besides the Boston. That's how he is. You know what I mean? So, but yeah.
So just hold on 1 second before we move on because we're going to change gears in a second here. But I'm just looking at it now. Here's your playoff bracket as of yesterday. Okay, if everything was as of yesterday in the standings in the East, the Heat would be playing the Hawks, and the Raptors would be playing the Wizards in the play-in tournament. The Bucks and Celtics would be playing the winner of those 2 games, and then the Sixers would be playing the Nets. Now, right now, the Nets don't scare anybody, and I probably by the time this all bottoms out, I see the Celtics. I mean, right now the Nets are 3-7 in their last 10. So by the time this all bottoms out, they'll be lucky to play in a play-in game.
Yeah.
So I don't think it'll be them. I think it'd be maybe a Knicks team or the Cavs, or maybe the Heat would bop up a little bit. So it's just like I said, like I'm not looking for the easiest path because, like you said, Joe, you're not wrong. There is you got to be the best, you got to beat the best, and you got to play through those guys, and but the Sixers need to be smart, and we saw that even they struggled the 1 year against the Wizards a little bit. That series went longer than it should have because of the way they played, but it is what it is, and we're going to change gears here in a second. But one thing I'll tell you right now that I don't change is where I get my tickets from, guys. And I go to sherrystickets.com. They are family owned and operated since 1946. And guys, as you know, it's the price you see on the screen is the price you're going to pay. You're not going to get bamboozled at checkout. You are going to get the best price available on the second market, better than anywhere else. Check them out. And guess what, guys? For an extra 10% off, you guys got to type in EOP10 promo code to Sherry's Tickets, or go to and just tell them we sent you. You can even call them. They give you a little that one-on-one personal love that you don't get from the other places. So check out Sherry's tickets. Use that promo code. Save yourself a couple bucks. Because like right now, hey, if you guys wanted to go, like say you didn't have tickets for it, you guys want to go to the Phillies home opener, you got to go to a place like Sherry's tickets again because they're sold out. And if you want to get robbed, don't go to Sherry's tickets. So let's change gears here, guys, for a second. Let's talk about your Philadelphia Eagles. So they finally announced their offensive coordinator. Which I guess to any of you guys, any shock that Brian Johnson got the job as offensive coordinator?
No.
No. And let me ask you a question: are you guys not happy with that? Joey Marks, I'll ask you first. Are you not happy with the Brian Johnson hiring?
There's more mystery than frustration because I don't know what Brian Johnson's going to bring to the table. Brian Johnson is a guy who did a lot of play calling in college, but as we all know, that doesn't always translate in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And you can have these cute little schemes in some, university with fast, pace gameplay, but when certain things don't work and it's, you're dealing with just as talented defensive coordinators playing against you. Brian Johnson's going to have a lot to prove to me.
Pat?
I kind of agree with Joe, but in the same sense, look, they didn't go shopping, outside the box. They stayed inside. They got themselves a homegrown guy. Again, probably they're going to give themselves a Shane Steichen 2.0. Somebody from inside who might, like Joe said, who might throw a couple of trick schemes here and there, but you gotta hope that's sustainable, and you gotta be able to, like Joe said, you have to kind of adjust to the league as well. So, look, there's a lot on his plate as well. So I'm not mad with the Eagles do. They're obviously looking for, like I said, another Shane Steichen 2.0 to replace, and I'm okay with it. I'm okay for now. So again, he knows. Again, another guy who knows Jalen Hurts really, really well, who's going to be able to help him out. All that good, all that fun stuff. But like Joey said, is it really going to translate into the NFL? Your college scheme plays, is that really your gameplay? Is that really going to transpire to the NFL? That remains to be seen.
At least with Jalen Hurts and with Johnson, I know it's a different OC, but at least the voices are a little similar. So like. We talked about sustainability within Jalen Hurts' progression as a star, and he had his first back-to-back year season with the same play caller. So will Brian Johnson bring a lot of those Steichen-isms or those Steichen-like plays to the table where it can make someone like Jalen Hurts more comfortable?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's my thing. My thing's consistency, and that we saw how consistency was a big thing. I think one of the major jumps that Jalen had this year was the fact of consistency and having somebody he's worked with who knows him, who helped him out. And I think Brian Johnson brings that consistency. I think Brian Johnson knows Jalen Hurts almost as much as Jalen Hurts knows himself. So my question mark would be more or less, can how is his play calling? Like, can he come up with less? Can he come up with more than just some vanilla plays? Is he going to be able to look outside of the Shane Steichen playbook? Does he have anything that he would be able to do? So that would be really, will he be able to change the playbook without making things uncomfortable for Jalen Hurts, and can allow Jalen Hurts not to take any large step backwards?
Well, you got to hope that, like, for him, he just doesn't get too gimmicky. Like, because some of those college coaches, when they first come out or when they first get that responsibility of play calling in the NFL, they can get very gimmicky. Flea flicker, like crazy flea flickers and reverses and pitches. And you're like, it'll make some of our hairs go gray. It'll make some of us pull our hairs out. It's
so that's why my beard's gray. See, I've been telling my wife it's not because I'm old; it's because the Philly sports have been doing it to me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And believe me, like there's gonna be some headaches. There's gonna be some bumps in the road because just like Jalen is still learning as a player, now Brian Johnson's learning as an OC. So we have to kind of give him a little bit of a pass. Actually, we have to give both coordinators a pass. And that's going to be hard because of how do you give two coordinators a pass for their first year when we just got done going to the Super Bowl? That's going to be hard. That's going to be a hard pill to swallow.
Hard. You're going to be losing a lot of pieces. I mean, you're right.
Well,
You're right, Joe.
you're going to be seeing a lot of different things. You got a new defensive coordinator, like we said. But let's talk about our old defensive coordinator for a second. And C.J. Gardner Johnson's words on Twitter as of lately, when Jonathan Gannon was at the combine and he was asked about the loss in the Super Bowl and all that stuff. C.J. Gardner Johnson said, "You ain't put us in a position to make plays." Emoji with his hands up. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not I don't think anybody will disagree with that comment. Do you disagree with him going out about it the way he did? Pat, I'll start with you on this one.
And listen, I hear what he's saying now because again, he took the cheap road. He didn't, he stayed there. He probably knew he was getting the job out there in Arizona for Forrest Gannon. But going back to this comment with Johnson, you listen, you took a shot at him, but and the same, I get it, the scheme and all that stuff, but you get blamed for you get blamed for it as well because you got to make the plays as well. So and I get it. We all see the Super Bowl, and I don't want to revisit the Super Bowl. And again, you leave open guys over the middle. You get left, some stupid plays out there for the Super Bowl, and like I said, you get blamed. You get half the blame too. So it's a 50-50 road for me.
Jonathan Gannon, a.k.a. Just a Goon.
That's my name.
So this guy, he's such a clown. And I say that because I completely agree with CJ in the sense that that's the things that I complained about for the majority of the year. When everybody was like ringing the bell and hand wringing all of Jonathan Gannon and everybody, and I mean even your guy Freddie Burns, Al, was like, you're not a fan of Jonathan Gannon. I'm like, listen, you can throw all the stats at me you want, but he's not where that talent is on that defense and what they could be if he just put them in the right positions. CJ had 6 interceptions, was the leading league leader in interceptions prior to him getting hurt. He was well on his way to possibly a defensive player of the year nominee. You had the guy that was on the defensive line that probably should have won defensive player of the year. You had guys that could have, even despite them getting 70 sacks in the regular season, could have done even more, which is mind-boggling. But he didn't put some people in better positions for success. And it is possible to do that because we've seen great defenses do that. And I just feel like, especially considering he goes and gets a head coaching job and he's defensive minded, and about 85 to 75 to 80% of head coaches are offensive minded in the NFL. You're the anomaly, and you're a defensive minded head coach now, and you say that after day one, you go, I'm not going to call any defensive plays.
Well,
I mean, I'm okay with a head coach. I actually prefer a head coach not to call plays on either side of the ball. I'm not saying they should have input, but we saw how, Doug Peterson had a hard time uh, juggling being an offensive coordinator as well as, being a head coach. And we saw how even Nick Sirianni struggled with it in the beginning and quickly said, I'm not doing well being able to be the best head coach I can be, handed the play calling over to Shane Steichen. It was the right call. I mean, there's a reason you have an offensive coordinator I mean, you lessen yourself that way. I feel only a real select few can handle both, and Andy Reid's of the world, that kind of stuff. Um, but even some of the other great coaches out there, I mean, Bill Belichick's not there calling the plays all the time, and maybe more on defense he is. But my point is, it's you need to have a balance. Like he should make calls. Like if he thinks his offensive coordinator's making stupid decisions, then he steps in and goes, "Yo, I don't like your game plan. It's vanilla. We're getting lit up out there because it's transparent." So I have no problem with him saying, "I'm not going to be making. I have a defensive coordinator for a reason, so I'm going to use him, but I'm
And,
going to be part of the scheming of it."
and again, to your guys' point, again, Jonathan Gannon again choked up facing an elite quarterback, a real legit quarterback. He choked up, and again, he didn't learn his lesson from Dak. He didn't learn his lesson in the Super Bowl. Again, where was the blitz, coverages? Where were I'm sorry, the blitz packages? Where was some schemes out there? Where was the pass rush? I mean, it was nothing. I mean, guys were left wide over the middle. I mean, making plays. I mean, easy touchdown for guys. I mean, this is not the defense that we're used to seeing. We're seeing playmakers, especially in the red zone. Good defensive plays in the red zone. We didn't see any of that. We were shocked by being up 10, going into the half, and getting blown out. They
See,
are not, losing that game.
and I'll chime in even more to what you're saying about how he dropped the ball, and I go back to kind of like the scheme, and a lot of people pointed this out after the Super Bowl, and it was the motion plays that Kansas City ran that really fooled the defense. Now, I used to play, and I by no means will ever consider myself even close to an NFL level player, but when I played high school football, the first thing they taught you is what happens when motion happens on an offensive set, because you have to know where you have to move. Even as a linebacker, I may not have to move with the defender, but I have to move out of the way of my guy coming across, like coming across my face. So I have to figure out how am I going to adjust once that motion goes in place, because now coverages change, the scheme changes, that your assignment might change. All these things are tangible to the offense showing a different look prior in a pre-snap read. That's the whole point of a middle linebacker being able to call out audibles. That's a whole point of a safety being able to change the coverage of his guys in the secondary. But Jonathan Gannon was like, no, this is my scheme. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to do an umbrella. We're going to put it this way. We're going to be real passive about it. What people probably didn't realize about that penalty with Bradbury is when it was time for the corners to play aggressive. Now you're playing aggressive when you're 6 yards off. You have to play catch up if you're not timed out the right way. And when exactly what you said, Pat, if you're not throwing blitz packages in there to show the offense a different look and to help your defenders, your players have a better reaction, that's where I go, okay, he wasn't ready for the biggest game. He wasn't ready.
No.
No, and here's my thing: is like you can't take away from what this defense looked like, um, all year long. I mean, they set records and all that stuff, but same thing. Complaints can be said that they didn't play a really stellar offense especially for the second half for most of the second half of the season. Um, but you still can't take away what has been done. Like I said, I can't just poo-poo Jonathan Gannon all the way. But I'm not a big fan. I'm not upset he's gone, I guess is the best way of putting it. But we could be kind of eating our words later, knowing we don't know we're gonna get from what's his name, who's the big guy,
Des-
Desai,
Desai, yeah.
Sean
Temple
Desai.
U.
Yeah.
We don't know. He could be great. He could be greatest things since sliced bread. He could, come out with all new different package. I don't know. That's the thing about this. And something Nick Sirianni said I kind of liked, and Nick Sirianni just after people were really ready to fire him after his first press conference because it was terrible. But since the second press conference, he's gotten better every time. But he said something today that kind of sat with me, not in a bad way, in a good way. He said, the beauty of starting a new season with a new coordinator, the silver lining of having to start fresh with somebody new is that nobody's going to have tape on his defense. I mean, they can go back and look at some things in Chicago and some things in Seattle, but they can't, they can't do anything else. They have to. They're gonna be surprised. So he'll have the element of surprise with him, and it's a good point.
Now there's he was a defensive coordinator, I believe, at Temple,
Mhm.
and prior to him going and getting into the NFL, he kind of was a part of like the Matt Rule coaching tree at Temple. One of the things I can tell you from some of the games that I watched of Temple when he was there is he is a blitzer. He does throw the linebackers out there. There was a guy that went to Pittsburgh, I believe. I forget the name, but he's a linebacker for Pittsburgh, and he was drafted in the fourth round. And he came from Temple, and he was a guy that conceivably you would never have thought he was a good, decent linebacker. But this defensive coordinator put him really in a good position to thrive. And so you just have to hope that if he could take some, I'm not going to say he's a jobber, but some regular Joe and turn him into an NFL asset. Hey, what is he going to do with actual NFL assets? What is he going to turn them into? That's what we are looking forward to finding out. And I think that Eagles fans will embrace him. He knows what the culture is in the city. So and he did a hell of a job with Seattle.
Yes, he did.
No, he
Yeah.
absolutely did. And if you another thing is if you're looking for a hell of a good time, I go to phillysportstrips.com. Um, Guys, here it is. You already, the Brooklyn Nets game is come and gone. The spring training games have already been sold out. I think if you did want to go to spring training, they do have a tailgate package still available for the March 17th or 16th to 21st. But the trip itself has been sold out. They do have the ultimate bus trip with the Yankees coming up on April 3rd. The NFL draft will be in Kansas City, so maybe you might get booed a little if we're wearing your midnight green, but hell, go out there and represent anyway. They have a lot of union trips coming up. They have one for Denver for 3 nights in May. You could do a double Denver trip at the same time. They're going to be out there for the Ultimate Coors Field trip, while the Phillies are taking on um, the Rockies.
Rockies.
Well, you forgot their name for a second. They also will be in London and Leeds in May, and they also be going to New York to City Field for a little Union bus trip. So they got a lot for all you soccer fans out there, and also I'm sure you'll be hearing a lot about it coming up tomorrow's show with the attacking third. But and don't forget this summer they got a Chicago trip, a Pittsburgh trip, a San Diego trip coming up, and then of course they'll start. Releasing all their football trips once the schedule's out. And I'm going to tell you something, guys. The Philly Sports Trip spring training games are sold out like lickety split. There's such a big draw for them. You can already go and put a deposit in for 2024. That's how much
Wow.
people are looking forward to it. That they are that ahead of the game right now. And I'll be telling you there, I won't be down with them. I'll actually be in Clearwater this Monday, taking in a couple games. It was a nice 40th birthday present for my wife. And we'll be down there. So I'll be sending you guys videos and pictures and comments from spring training live this week coming up. But check out phillysportstrips.com for an awesome Philly sports adventure, you know? and for an affordable Philly sports adventure. But let's talk about those Phillies because after Pat, you said I don't want to talk about the Super Bowl, but I will bring up that it's still something that sits not well with me. When I was in the mind that we should have won this one. This was ours to win. The fact that you beat Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and only lost, I mean, you lost to them, but only by 3. When you kept giving, like I always said, whoever played the cleanest game will win that game. And obviously, the Eagles did not play a clean game. But the one thing that's been helping me get through this is my love for baseball and for Phillies baseball. And we already have some spring training ahead of us. We got to see, um, some new faces that are here now. Let's talk about Trey Turner for a second. Now, once again, it's only spring training, so you take everything with a grain of salt. But he's batting a 667. He's 4 for 6 with extra base hits, 3 ribbies, two runs scored, and 1 stolen base. Um, but it's nice to see a guy stepping in who's going to be able to take up. We saw you've got to watch or listen to any of the Andrew Painter game today. I mean, it wasn't anything that's like going to get you super excited, but for a 19-year-old, he went 2 innings facing 8 batters, allowed 2 well struck singles in a run in the second, got out of it with a fly out double play and a tapper to short. So, I mean, a 19-year-old, like that's another thing like we kind of look past is the Andrew Painter. Because how many times, Joe? I know we've talked about this a lot. That this depleted farm system of the
Yep.
Phillies, and it's all we ever heard about. And they're gonna have to trade everything away to make this team better. But they got one of the top pitching prospects in baseball right now, and there's a very high chance I think he makes the starting rotation.
Yeah, and a stat that I had heard not that long ago is that if Painter makes the roster, he will be the youngest prospect in Phillies history.
That's
Uh,
believable.
that I mean, wrap your head around how long the Phillies have existed, and then wrap your head around that Painter could be the youngest that ever dressed in Philly pinstripes. That's something to behold because usually the Phillies don't move that quickly. It is a long, grueling process for the most part, and I I look forward to it with Painter, but I have to say I look forward to him, Nick Nelson, Bailey Falter. I'm looking forward to seeing what they bring because that competition for that 5th spot is going to be very interesting. I actually heard the most like not I say it in jest, but 6 starters of like a 6-man rotation. Like what? Like I was begging for 5 last season, and you're gonna possibly give me 6?
I mean, that's a point to be made. I'm glad you brought that up because, we were dealing with a pretty much a 4 starting rotation and,
Mm.
a bullpen type game every 5th game. And we still were able to produce in the way we were because luckily in the playoffs you can get away with 4 starting pitchers. But my, I think a lot of I think they'll start with 6. I don't think they'll go the whole season with 6. I think because of the shortened off season, they're gonna let guys like Wheeler and Nola really kind of, you know,
Those
kind of
rain
have the
delay doubleheaders is when they'll really utilize the
Yeah.
6.
yeah. But I think also they're gonna use them in the beginning just to give these guys a little extra time off, and you see the number differences when you have a Wheeler and you have a Nola with an extra day's rest. They do really well. Some
Mhm.
guys don't. Some guys are very much creatures of habit, especially in baseball, and it doesn't always play out that well. Now, with that being said, looking at this roster, looking at what you right now, outside of Andrew Painter, which watching him progress, what is the other player, the storyline, or the other, what is Pat Bernard
Oh.
watching in the beginning of the season? What are you keeping your eye on?
Uh, well, I want to touch on something you alluded to and a little bit ago. 4 championship runs with the city and came up 0-4. Philadelphia Stars, if you want to count them, Union, all that stuff. It is time to turn the page, as you will. But your
Maybe
question is,
Mac McClung doesn't really. He didn't break the cycle for us with the
nah, he's not really
the
digging
slam
and
dunk contest.
he's really not grabbing the old junk.
All right.
But no, to answer your question, the storyline for me is Alec Bohm. Can he continue what he brought into last year again when he played really really well, especially when Bryce Harper went down. Because when Bryce Harper went down, we thought all bets are off the window. It was going to collapse, and he didn't. He continued his hitting streak. Small ball, small ball, small ball between him and Nick Castellanos. People forget about Nick Castellanos. They were between the both of them were ranked 16th in the league, tied for hitting. So I just want to see if they can continue with their streaks here with the hitting. And I also want to see what are they going to do with again. Are they going to keep Schwarber in that leadoff spot? Or are they going to finally turn the page and say, you know what, this is going to be Turner's time? Again,
Uh,
we all
Rob pretty much said that that's what's happening. Rob
yeah.
pretty much said that. He goes, yeah, no, we got guy like Trey Turner here. He's going to be in the
So
leadoff. Yeah.
so it's the because again that 1-2 punch of him and Hoskins right there hurted this team. Hurt. Again, home run king. I get all that of the NLEs of the NL, but the strikeout king overall, and him and Hoskins was like a 1-2. You're got 2 Ks. So what I like to see Turner lead off. I like to see Baum second. Then I like to see and I like to see Harper when he gets back. So you got all that lined up for you. You got 2 guys to get on base. Boom. You got Harper. And then you follow up with Kyle Schwarber. That's what I like to see as your top 4.
Um, yeah, and you brought one person I really want to. I've been keeping my eye on, and I kind of knew I was going to, be following a little bit. Would be Alec Bohm. Guy put on some weight in a good way. Some muscle for some
Mm-hmm.
power. I'm excited to see if he can continue to progress in the defensive end of his game, and because his hitting was always pretty good, he had a little slump here and there, but for consistency wise, he's been pretty consistent for us over the last couple of years. He had that, big, it's just more his defense was the question, but we saw him progress,
Yes.
and he played well on the biggest stage in the game from a defensive standpoint. So my point would be, can he continue to progress defensively? And will this add a power and maybe a little swagger with him? Maybe a little, I've been to the World Series now. I know what it feels like. I got a feeling for it now. What can I do? Like, can I continue this? And that's one of the other storylines I'll be keeping my eye on. Joey Marks, what about you?
So to just add in before I touch on the person I really am going to look towards this coming season, that swagger you're talking about with Bum, I think it's not just like that national swagger because he went to the World Series, but I think it's a local swagger too, because after he made those comments and he did step up, like this city's behind him, and he knows that now. He knows what he has to do, personality and attitude wise, to deliver for this city, and that is going to matter. When being beloved in this city, you have to deliver for this fan base. Now, the guy that I look to take a big step forward because his security blanket's gone is DJ Bryson Stott. Um, you could pick another song for the season. I don't care. Your play better translate at the plate and on the diamond, because you don't have the security blanket like you did with Segura anymore. You're the guy. And I want to see Bryson Stott take a big leap forward. I felt like all the people I was hearing give their little lineups for what they want to see on opening day, I kept hearing Stott's name at number 8 or 9. And I honestly felt like that was a bit disrespectful to a guy who at one point in time was one of the better hitters during last season. And he carried a little bit of the Phillies offense for a little short stint. and he had some really clutch hits. And so for me, it's a matter of I just need to see the next steps. I need to see the next leap from the youngster.
You make a good point, and like I said, there's going to be a lot of storylines here to follow. Baseball's a long season; it's a marathon, and but I, I mean, it's me being very biased. I love baseball. I could easily say it's probably my second love next to football in this town. But there's a lot to watch. The watching spring training is getting excited. I will report back to you guys over the week down in spring training because my awesome wife got me a great present, and she is sitting right next to me. So I'm
No, Miss
really,
Hard.
I'm buttering it up right now. I'm getting some brownie points with the
Yeah,
little lady. But
good man.
we're coming to the end of the show here. But real quick, I do want to touch on the Flyers a little bit,
Ah,
and
jeez.
not
Wait a
touch them
minute.
too much because I feel like I might get like syphilis or something if I touch them too much.
Yes, yes. One of us is gonna walk
Uh,
out of here with herpes.
yeah, but the the God, the they are up 2-1 right now in two periods of hockey against the Rangers, but we know how they all do against we all how the Flyers record in the third, so we'll find out how that plays out. But I mean, one thing that's kind of I don't know if it made me feel better or worse or just made me feel okay. But the Torts came out and said, we're not making the playoffs. So they finally have just admitted that they're not making the playoffs. They're here to see what happens next and try to get young guys play. But the fact that they really haven't done anything or moved anybody is a little disheartening. Pal, or I'll start with you. Uh, you know, I'll be covering the game tonight uh, via article, but we have. What do you take away from this?
Again, it goes back to full circles, back to square one when he made that press conference last year. You know, we're going to be in the thick of things. In 2 years. Him and Chuck, Chuck Fletcher and the owner were saying, you know what, they're going to be in the thick of things, and yet here we are, 3 years, 2 years without playoffs. And we've got nothing. We have moved anything. We haven't done anything. We made no moves forward in the progress yet. I've yet to see anything. Okay, we moved on from the Drews of the world, and we all thought that was going to be, and I was all on board about it. But again, we have an island loaded with misfit toys, and what really hurts us all, and I keep on saying this, it goes back to October when we were surrounded with the Eagles having their run, the Phillies having their run, the Union having their run, and we got spoiled. But I held myself to high when I said I want to wait till the other side of November, because I know when November comes, the Flyers always crash that boat, and they've done that every year, and they have never disappointed me. So they've yet to find any kind of run or rhythm. I mean, early January you had that, and then they go in an All-Star break and they just fall apart. And again, here we are being sellers, and yet we have yet to sell anything. We've yet to, what have we really sold here? I mean, I still
Our
see
souls.
our souls to the devil. Uh, um, I mean, this is getting to a bullet point here. And then before we went on there, I mean, again, I've asked you guys, what's this team? We've heard the great farm system, but what if they hit the home run on here? I've seen a double play from Konechny. Well, he's more like a single in Carter Hart. But other than that, what's been a bright spot here in this homegrown talent?
Well,
Nothing.
that's kind of why I've been on the. I hate tanking. I love watching Flyers hockey, but I hate tanking. But at the same time, it has to happen. We have rock meet bottom. The
Yeah.
Flyers are at rock bottom. The only way you're going to get out of this is to lose games and maybe get yourself a generational talent where you could build around.
But again, when the Matty B's and the Freddie Burns were calling for the tank, and I was the only idiot in the planet saying, no, no, let's try and make a playoff run. I was the only idiot saying that. And again, and
You're
if
our
we were,
favorite idiot, Pat.
yeah, well, that's what my wife tells me. But again, if this team was to make tank it, I'm not so sure the guys in the front office get scout talent. I'm not so sure of that about that. If this was anybody else's farm system, I would sign up for it because I think they would have the right guy in play. I don't know if Chuck Fletcher can scout talent. I don't know if the scouts in the farm system can scout talent. I'm not so sure about what this team can do as far as bringing in the right talent here because I've yet to see any of it.
Yeah, and I agree, and I'm going to even add more gasoline onto the fire.
Oh, light them up, Joe.
And so here's the thing: you said it took to November for that boat to crash. No, that boat went asunder back in like August and September, and me and you went back and forth and said that Johnny Hockey needs to be a flyer. Period. In the sentence. That's just that. And that didn't happen. And when that didn't happen, I knew that Fletcher was soft, and I knew that this team was going in a different direction. But I will go to what Al's saying, but then I'm confused, and that's what this team has been. Like, if there is a word that describes this team to me right now, is
Yeah,
confused,
but Joe, it goes back to
because they have assets like Kevin Hayes, Sean Couturier, James Van Riemsdyk. If you're tanking, you sell off those assets. It's a fire
Well,
sale.
it's bad contracts too. I
you.
mean, that's the problem. JVR has a bad contract. Kevin Hayes, if you want to get anything for him, you're gonna have to eat $2-3 million of his contract. Um, you're gonna like, but that's my problem is like it's there. It's not just Chuck Fletcher. It's what happened before Chuck Fletcher with Hextall into Fletcher,
That's
and
what I'm saying.
that's why that's one of the major reasons we're so far behind. We couldn't even say, all right, sell the whole team and buy a new team. We don't have that ability.
Again, and look at the trail, right? I mean, you're constantly in and out of the playoffs. You make it to the first round, you're out. If you're lucky, you make it to a second round, you're out. Again, for so many years, I mean, look at the coaches, Berube, Dave Haxtell. I mean, all these guys who've come and gone, AV, all these guys who've come. And look at all the goaltenders have come and gone. You had the Steve Masons of the world, man. These guys can't find talent. They don't know anything. And you're like you guys are saying, they're in cap hell. They sign these ridiculous guys 20 years past their prime. They'll give them a 20-year, like they're in their prime contracts, and it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And look, and again, I can always allude to this. Tom Kelly was there when I went to fight Dave Haxtell at the Flyers Wife Carnival, and I didn't want to fight him. I wanted to fight Ron Hextall, but again, this because it just drives me bonkers because this organization has absolutely no direction of what they want to do.
Yeah,
None.
but keep in mind, guys, like there is a difference between with the NHL in comparison to a lot of other leagues. There, yes, if you want to tank and you're in salary hell, you eat a little bit to get a lot more later. And Chuck hasn't done that. You could buy out a guy or two during an off season. You could trade a Kevin Hayes and say we'll take 3 million off his salary and eat it for a year or two, and it's just to sweeten the deal to get a pick back. Because right now it's a matter of gaining assets, not just sitting on your hands. It seems like Chuck Fletcher is more worried about his golf game than the job he's been appointed
And,
to.
and right, Joe, and the person you feel bad for the most because you see him on the bench is John Torella, the guy,
Absolutely.
and the guy I didn't want here. I thought it was a bonehead mistake, but no, like once you understand like what do you want to do with the team and all this other stuff, it's just like then you just see him and look, if that was John Torella from 20 years ago, half these guys would have been gone by now. But I mean, he's trying to be calm. He understands, it's a new generation. But man, he looks like he's standing in his own personal hell. Just he has no answers, and he's got to face the media every day, trying to come up with some kind of positive thing to say and all this stuff. When he knows he's got nothing to work with, he can't build a
I
car
don't
with
think he
no
worries about
tools.
saying something positive. I just think I'm just glad his honesty is refreshing. Like I said, when he said
Yeah.
Yes,
we're not
yes.
trying to win, and when he said one thing, if you think about it, it makes sense. If he said when he said like I might not even be here when this team's winning or has a good chance to win, when he said that, I think he knows what his role is. And I think they said that like, listen, you're going to come in, you're going to create a culture of accountability, but we know that type of coaching doesn't last long. Guys like John Tortorella move around within 3 or 4 years because it weighs thin. It's like kind of like a
It's
dog that
the
barks all day long. After a while, you get so used to it, it's almost like you can't hear it.
Torts
it's
is
Um,
the
and
Brett Brown
no, I
of the
mean
Flyers.
not
yeah,
just that. You just have
sacrificial lamb.
you just had that past regime with AV, right? A guy who is a no nonsense guy, who's guys going to bench guys. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It didn't get nowhere. It didn't get nowhere. It just, I mean, it honestly just, like I said, just put him on the bench.
Oh boy, hold on. We were about to
Uh-oh.
end this. We were about to be done, but then he couldn't help himself. Here he is,
Bring him in.
the Matty
I
B.
Gentlemen, how you doing?
What is
Uh,
going on, Matty
a
B?
man who wants to
Did
talk
someone
some
put the bat signal on and Matty B just heard it?
No, I heard you guys talking Flyers and talking some Chuck Fletcher and seeing how we're on the
Yes.
heels of Clear the Ice. I thought I'd jump in here real quick and
First
just kind
of
of
all,
lend my 2 cents into that. That's okay.
Matt, I praised you on your show yesterday. You called it what it was, a bunch of stiffs in that media room. You called it straight yesterday. I loved it.
Yeah,
The media is a whole other situation. But as far as Chuck Fletcher goes and the little presser that he had yesterday, and Al, I just heard what you said about you appreciated the honesty. What exactly is Chuck Fletcher being honest about? Because he sold us a bill of goods about aggressive retool, which
No, I said Torts. Torts. I'm glad that somebody in the organization finally said, "Yeah, we're not really. We know you're not trying to win, but I'm glad he's about to say like the elephant was in the room and he pointed it out. You know what I mean?"
And that all, but it brings up a problem because there's obviously a disconnect, in my opinion, between the head coach and the GM. Torts brought something up a few days ago or a week ago during the Farabee thing about Farabee's camp not happy about his development or his playing role with the Flyers. And then Torts made a statement when that was brought to his attention that he was told that Farabee could play center at the beginning of the season. And he said, I believe it was Chuck Fletcher who told me he could play center, which he couldn't, he said. So I think there's a little bit of fracture right now between the GM and the coach. I highly anticipated, gentlemen, that when we get around to the summer, when we get around to the draft, Chuck Fletcher will not be the GM of this hockey team because I just don't see this thing. There's just a lot of lies. A lot of lies that are being exposed by the media. And yeah, the media, don't get me started with them, but there's a lot of lies being exposed that Chuck Fletcher blatantly lied to the fans, lied to fans. And yesterday during his presser, first time in 3 months, he has spoken to the media. And it happens to be the day that the buyouts for next year's season tickets were due. So do you think that's a little coincidental?
I mean, the Sixers used to do the same thing when they were tanking. They would Joel Embiid might be playing this day, when he was not playing, or Ben Simmons he might be, we might be seeing Ben Simmons. By the way, but get your season tickets, Yeah, we've seen that a lot. And speaking of, for those who are following along with us, there's a lot of action still going on here at EOP, and like Matty B said, clear the ice following the Rangers game. I will have the article following it later. Attacking Third will be in tomorrow. We'll get to hear about the the currently undefeated Philadelphia Union, who are won their first game of the season, and then of course Joey Marks will be with the Patterson Fanatics in studio on Saturday at 9 a.m. and I'll be hanging out with Pat for my last time on EOP for a few days. On a show for a few days with him, PM and the AM with him and Mike, as well as another Clear the Ice and All Across All the Time. So guys, Matt, I agree with you. I think Chuck Fletcher's done, and I guess the only reason they haven't fired him yet is because they're probably trying to wait till we start to see what GMs become available.
Yeah, and here's the problem too with the trade deadline looming. And by the way, where did future considerations go to college, and what round is he drafted in the draft, and what number is he going to wear, and what line is he playing on? Because I can't figure it out, and I don't know where he's at in the media guide. But if the Flyers do, and I also believe that they will trade JVR here before Friday, but I hope the hell they don't trade anybody else. And here's why: I don't want Chuck Fletcher making the move because the other pieces on this team do have value. The other pieces of this team have a lot of value, and I don't want this guy making these trades because I don't want him setting me up for the Chuck Fletcher effect for the next 3 years, and he's not even here to deal with it. So please trade JVR and be done and just step away. That's my suggestion.
You don't want him to be the Matt Klintak of the Flyers.
Yes.
No, and Al, you brought up a good point though. I've heard rumors Barry Trotz is looking to become a GM. Yeah. So I'm hoping this window opens so you get rid of that.
Want to take a chance on a guy? I mean, that Barry Trotz is a winning coach and all that stuff. Don't get me wrong. on that end of things. But do you really want to take a chance? Does this team need somebody who's never GM'd in their life?
Well, then it kind of blows up the narrative of the Danny Briere thing. And that seems to be the popular name out there. I don't want Danny Briere as, again, I'm not asking him to score goals in April. I'm asking him to run a hockey team, and it's a different thing here. So I'm not, I don't want him
I wouldn't
to,
say I'd be super excited by Danny Briere. He would be I like Danny Briere as a player. I got to meet him a couple times. Really nice guy. I even have his autographed jersey, and I love Danny Briere, but I don't know how much. I mean, look at Bobby Clark, typical. He's a guy who's a great player, a coach, a GM. He did all that great stuff, but that doesn't mean it's going to translate across the board. But Matty B, you bring up a good point. You made me think here for a second, which is it's that if you guys were in the same room, you could smell the burning. Yeah, but do you think part of the lack of moves comes from them saying that Chuck knows he's on the pretty much don't make any moves. We're gonna let the next guy handle this.
Yeah, I do. There's really no other, because today Jacob Chikrin, who's one of the most coveted young defensemen in the game of hockey, was sent to the Ottawa Senators for like a first-round pick this year or 2 second rounds and a third round. You're telling me the Flyers couldn't have pulled something like that off? That to me makes no sense of all these moves that are being made for literally nothing. That doesn't seem all that, and the Flyers are not in any on this. To me, it's a little strange that that's not happening.
Yeah. Well, guys, we'll find out. You'll find out a little bit later, not too long from now, from Matty B on Clear the Ice. I'll have the article out later. We have a new guest writer, Evan Banks, who put out an XFL article, so you guys can check that out on EOPsports.com. As well as you'll check Joey Marks out Saturday morning on Patterson at Fanatics. You'll check out Pat again on the PM and the AM on Sunday, 9 a.m. And you'll be hearing from me at some points from sunny Clearwater, Florida at during the week. So next week, that means I will not be on the show. And actually, Joe won't be on the show either, I think, already. We're not exactly sure. But Freddie Burns will be taking the helm of the EOP Live show. And I'm sure he'll have somebody along with him. Maybe one of you guys. Maybe God only knows. We're going to keep you in suspense. So tune in next Wednesday to find out. But I'm Big Al.
I'm Joe Marks.
I'm Pat Bernard.
Yeah, Matty B.
We'll see you guys next time.
There's one thing I want you to do for me.
What?
Come here.
What?
Win. Win.